Lacey, how you doing? Okay, thank you so much for your resubmission. I really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, for the actual process book itself, and let me just reduce this a little bit so we can fit it in the window. There we go. Okay, the process book itself I don't think you're quite there yet in terms of the comments that I had made in your first video that was submitted a couple of days ago. So specifically, I think we really need a lot of detail here in defining the problem, listing the main features. So instead of just saying, okay, main feature, social networking, explain the main features, explain social networking and why you would consider it to be a main feature in the starving artists mobile app. Okay, why is printing gallery? How does it work, and why is it important? As far as education, I don't know what that means. I mean, what is a main feature of an app? Education. I'm just a little bit unclear, Lacey, as to what that means. So really want to specify this. And I remember saying in the first video, and I'll persist here, that as a designer in your presentation work, you always want to make the assumption that the viewer doesn't know anything about what they're about to look at. So things like this, you would spot this as a designer. You would say, okay, I'm listing my main features. Education is my main feature. How can I make that make sense to the viewer? And I think obviously the answer would be to describe this. What do you mean education? What are the connections and what is the relevance between this main feature and its connection to the end user? Okay, so in other words, why is education important to this app? Why is education important to the way the end user interacts with this app? Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, required applications, Adobe Illustrator. What are you using that for? InVision, what is it and what are you using it for? The same thing with competitors. You really, really want to describe these. If you take a look at the competitor page of the example, you can see this example's got just the competition pages are incredible. There's 5 of them, and here they are. So if you can imagine the effectiveness of this, if you're looking at a presentation, okay, comparative analysis of the competition, Stories Alive. Here is the functionality and features of Stories Alive. Here's the synopsis of the visual design, and then here's a synopsis of the pros and cons. We see that for not only that example, but for Capstone Interactive, Dr. Seuss Books, Moo Ba La La La, and Bridging Book. So that's a really complete presentation right there. I hope that you can see the benefit of presenting like this as opposed to just giving a bullet list stating things that seemingly don't make a whole lot of sense to the viewer without that explanation and that description. So I definitely think the written format is the way to go here, for sure. Same thing with your target audience. You really, really want to define that target audience. Let's go ahead and take a look at let me see. I'm trying to figure out, I can't remember exactly where that target audience, influence pages, that's interesting. I want to, DSIS, functions and features. I'm trying to find that target audience page. I don't know where it is off the top of my head. There it is right there. So you can see we've got 3 full-blown paragraphs. There's probably 15 sentences here or 20 sentences on target audience. So this in-depth description of the target audience is fantastic. It's got to be an in-depth uh, definition and define and develop your target audience, because you're using that target audience to develop your personas and your scenarios, right? So it only makes sense to really develop that out. And again, the best way to do that is not by numbering the important elements, but describing them. User personas, I don't see any user personas here. And just to recap what is due for this week's submission, we need your ideation of the problem, your target audience, 3 main functions of the app, your competition, including your pros and cons. You want to establish your personas in at least 1 scenario. I recommend at least 3 personas and 2 scenarios for a complete. I think it'll be a more professional presentation in your uh, final student portfolio when that time comes. Create wireframe sketches of all screens. You had a question about that. I'll be glad to address that. Create storyboards of the scenario. Where is the user when they are confronting and overcoming the problem? And then paper prototype. So we have that, but I don't have wireframes or storyboards here. We just end at target audience. So there's no personas, no scenarios, no wireframes, or storyboards. So these are all fair game for Sunday. So we got to get these in the process book for Sunday. These also are part of the first part of the establishment for your mobile app project, which is project 2, right? So these absolutely have got to be addressed this week. Let's go ahead and jump to your question about prototypes. I thought, where is it? I think it was in your last submission, which I'm glad I caught this. Am I correct in my understanding that I now transfer these to the digital and that will fulfill the requirements for the wireframes? Okay, the wireframes should of course be done before the paper prototypes, right? Because the wireframes are your plan. Okay, how do these screens go? Do I say, okay, here's the welcome screen. Here's the screen where you set up your profile. Here's the screen where you, your settings screen. Here's the next screen, and so on and so forth. You have to plan all of those screens out via wireframe, okay? Then you'll base your paper prototypes based off the wireframes. It's not the opposite. It's not you draw out your paper prototypes, then create your wireframes. Okay, you have the plan first, then you execute the plan. Now, it's important to note that based on your wireframes and your prototypes, based on user testing, if user testing is inaccurate in any area, you have to go back to your paper prototype, right, and make those adjustments. So let's say they're selecting the wrong choice for a specific command, and 5 out of 5 user test subjects selected the wrong area. Well, you want to go back and change that in your wireframe because that's going to go into your final app, that change. So you'll have to change that wireframe. Subsequently, you'll change the paper prototype to reflect that change in the wireframe, which will in turn change the user testing. Okay, hope that makes sense. If not, let me know, because that's a critical key point in the process. So, if you're ever not sure, just jump over to this example. This example is right over here. It's this treehouse example, and it's listed. It's right at the bottom of week 1, project 1, user-centered design process begin. It's right there. So if you want to take a look at it, I download it, I keep it so I can open it at any time to review it, refer to it. So for example, we come down here and we can see what the wireframes should look like. These are the wireframes, and this is what wireframes should look like. Okay, so once you have your wireframes established for all of your screens, okay, so here, as you can see, we've got the sign-in page, the My Library page, the purchase a book page, the edit profile page, the settings page, the search page, the create a pet page, the choose a pet page, the print page, I'm sorry, the pet page itself, and then the library with the pet page. So every page that is depicted in this mobile app is shown here in the wireframe. Okay, so what you would do now is you would take these wireframes. What you could feasibly do is use your wireframes for your user testing. So by that, what I mean is you have your picture of the iPad, right? Here's your first screen. That square right there is your first screen. So you would show that to your user. You would ask them where they would select to create their user profile. They would press the button. If they got it right, you would then take this piece of paper here, the wireframe, and slip it right over here and say, okay, this is what you selected. Now where would you select to? And then you give them another choice, okay? So yes, theoretically, you could use your wireframes for your paper prototypes, but it's not the other way around. You can't use your paper prototypes for your wireframes. I hope that makes sense. Now, let's take a look at your prototypes, and there are some things here that I don't think are explained very well, and I think that one of our classmates, Lacey, had the same experience, and let me just find, you received an outstanding critique here from Anna. Yeah, Anna is saying that an image 0197 confused about the faded screen. What action button selected means. What the action button selected means. faded screen when action button is selected. What does that mean? It's not described. I'm not sure what or where the action button is. I think it would help to clarify this more. It seems that you've made a good start. Okay, blah, 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 blah. And I don't mean blah, 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 Anna, if you're listening. I'm just trying to specifically image 4801, getting confused on what I'm seeing here. I don't understand that I'm able to select a region or a time zone, but why? And I agree with these comments. Totally agree with these comments. So if you want to describe something, you've got to describe it. But the planning here has got to be impeccable. I mean, it's got to be impeccable. So if there are any questions in your paper prototypes, your user testing is going to be null and void. So you really want to plan these out to the highest degree. I would go ahead and say these are more of sketches than paper prototypes because you've got notes and you've got all these notes. Paper prototypes would be cut out and they would be the actual pieces that you lay down in front of your user when you're doing your testing to make the adequate choices. Okay, hope that makes sense. If not, again, let me know. This is a really, really important assignment in order to establish the success, basically, of not only the app, but the user testing as well as the presentation itself. Okay, so all right, those are my comments. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to make any clarifications needed. Thank you very much, Lacey.